Hey, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. Want to welcome everyone back for week number 35 of this cycle. Um, I think I mentioned it last week in preparing for the Thursday night meeting with Steve. He asked me to put together kind of a bio and a history of my relationship with the big book. And I realized going back into my records that I started doing the Sunday night big book study this meeting. Although originally it was at 7 o'clock, now it's at 5 o'clock. But we started it 17 years ago. 17 years we've been doing this meeting at this time. Um, and when COVID hit, we just jumped right in and we went from going from maybe people a meeting. Sometimes there was three of us, and Anita and I and one other person, and that was the meeting. And now we're up to we average about 100 and a half each week, and that is amazing. So thank you all for coming and being part of this, allowing the big book to come alive for so many people. We have taken the third step collectively, which means we have also begun the fourth step. Once we do one, we have to immediately go into the other. And our assignment from last week is at the bottom of page 64. The last paragraph says resentment is the number one offender. And then a few lines down, it gives us the assignment, which is we listed people, institutions, or principals with whom we were angry. And we had a prompt list. Andy, you may want to put that up from last week. I think it's the anger prompt list. I think I could figure out what we called it. It was 64-3. Just to kind of help you think up things. I never met an alcoholic who didn't know exactly who he was angry at. So people, that's easy. Institutions, maybe a little bit of work, but principles take some thought. Principles are the kind of things that are drilled into our heads as we grow up, whether it's through teachers, through religious training, through our parents, through any number of ways, that things that get into our head that just cause us angst and conflict and confusion. For example, I was raised never strike another person in anger, never put your hand on another person in anger. And I believe that. I raised my son that way. But when I was a kid, I was always the shortest kid in class. I was a chubby little kid. I had glasses and braces in the second grade. I got picked on and I never fought back. And I felt conflicted because while I felt I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing what my parents want me to do, why do I feel like a coward? Why do I feel like I'm wrong here? And that's what we're talking about. Those are the kind of things that stay with us as we grow up. Everybody, I think, has their parents telling them, if you're a male, the real men do this. Real men don't cry. One of my guys was told that every time he cried as a little kid, from his earliest recollection, he got slapped. His father said, real men don't cry, and you don't cry. That's what he learned his whole life. Stifle whenever he feels those feelings. So those are the kind of things we're talking about. Girls, women, same thing. Real women don't do this. Real girls don't do that. Don't dress like this, so on. Uh, that's what we're talking about. Those kind of principles. That's what we were asking that you put in a list. And you could take that down. But what I wanted to do before we did that is I want to go back to something we skipped over a little bit. At the top of the page, the first full paragraph that says, therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. Um, it's in your handouts. It was review of step 4. But what I want to do is I want to go through this paragraph at least twice. And let's in order to make points, Bill always told stories. He always related it to things that we could identify with. And he's talking about an inventory that we have to take. So what better way to put that across than to talk about a business inventory? Because every business, I don't care what business you're in, you have to do some kind of inventory to find out what products are selling, what products are damaged, and so on. So we do the same thing. So what we're going to do is this paragraph, beginning with a business which takes no regular inventory goes broke. I'm going to ask that you highlight the whole paragraph. You'll just save a moment of time as we go through it. And there are certain words, as I read through it the first time, I'm going to ask that you underline. And then we're going to go through it a second time. I'm going to substitute some words. So, a business, and I've underlined business, which takes no regular inventory, usually goes broke. And please underline goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory, and please underline commercial, is a fact-finding, let's underline fact-finding, and fact-facing, let's underline fact-facing process. It's an effort to discover the truths, please underline truths, about the stock in trade, and please underline stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged, unsaleable goods. Please underline damaged or unsaleable goods. And please underline to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. And please underline values. So if we're looking at this from a business point of view, what this paragraph is telling me is that a business that doesn't take regular inventory goes broke. I don't care what your business is. You could operate a shoe store, but somewhere in the back of that shoe store, in the back storage room, on the bottom shelf or on the back top shelf, there are shoes that are dusty, that are faded, may even be damaged, that aren't selling for whatever reason, and you need to move that inventory out. I spent 40 years of my professional career in the car business, and every 30 days we took inventory of all of the cars, but specifically the used car lot, because used cars are money. They tie up money. When we take a car in on trade, we're putting a dollar value in it on it, and when it sits on the lot, it represents that dollar amount. And so after 30 days, if it doesn't sell, we reduce the price. We check the market and we reduce the price. If after 60 days it still hasn't sold, we put it in the shop to find out why. Does it need any kind of work? Maybe it needs to be cleaned up. Let's move it up in the front of the lot. Let's reduce the price. Let's get aggressive with selling that car. And if by 90 days it hasn't sold, it gets up on a truck and we send it to the auction. And even though we may have put, say, $10,000 in trade value, if I could turn that over, maybe get 8,000 or 7,000, that's still $7,000 or $8,000 I could use to buy another car that might sell, and I might make up that difference. That's what we're talking about in inventory, is know what is selling and what is not selling. Why are they not selling? So taking a commercial inventory, and again, that's what we're doing. A commercial inventory is fact finding and fact facing. You got to find out why it's not selling, and you have to face it. It's an effort to discover the truth about our stock and trade. And in whatever your business is, if it's the car business, your stock and trade is iron. Are those cars sitting on your lot? If you're in shoes, your inventory, your stock and trade are those shoes that are sitting on the store, on the shelves, or in the windows. How often do you go by a shoe store and you see a pair of shoes that's been sitting in the window for weeks and it's faded and it's getting dusty and you're watching the value of the shoes disappear before your eyes? That's what we're talking about. Move the inventory around. To disclose damaged, unsaleable goods and get rid of them promptly and without regret. And regret is an important point because he says in the next statement, if the owner of the business is successful, he cannot fool himself about the values. I had an owner who got very attached to a particular used car. it happened to be a vintage Mustang, and that black GT 5 liter Mustang is my dream car. Kathy will tell you that. And so I was attached to that car also. But I knew we were asking too much money for it because we were asking a collector's price. And the owner, after 30 days, said, I don't care. Just leave it the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that car. And he said the same thing by the time he reached 90 days. And the point was, he was sentimental about that car. He had lost the truth about that car. He had lost the value. He forgot his job is selling these things, not collecting them. If he really wanted it that badly, buy it, put it in your garage, and you keep it. But you can't be getting sentimental about values, about your inventory, and you can't be sentimental about the defects that we're going to be talking about now. So let's go back through this. And I suggested we underline some things. Now let's substitute some words. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. We underline goes broke. See you later, hon. Instead of goes broke, let's write gets drunk. That's what happens in our business. If we don't keep track of our inventory, if we don't do our meditation in our inventory and are working with others, we're going to go broke. And for us, going broke is getting high, is getting drunk. So if we don't do an inventory, we usually get drunk. Taking a personal, please underline, we underline commercial. Now we're going to say the word is personal. Taking a personal inventory, because that's what we're doing in the fourth step, is we're taking a personal inventory. It's not a business, it's a personal inventory, is a fact finding, and above fact finding, that's right, searching, because that's what fact finding is. We're searching, we're looking for things. And a fact facing, and above fact facing, please write fearless. We have to be fearless. We can't be sentimental. We can't be attached to any defects that we may like. We're on page 64, paragraph 1. Page 64, paragraph 1. Is a fact-finding and fact-facing, which is a searching and fearless inventory. It's an effort to discover the truth. We underline the word truth, and above it, please write the word morals. M-O-R-A-L-S, morals, because our fourth step is a moral inventory, and moral is defined as the truth in any given matter. So what we're trying to arrive at in a business inventory is the truth. Why isn't that car selling? Is there something we need to do, etc.? So in this case, we're saying that the truth, I'm sorry, we're trying to discover the truth, the moral about our stock and trade. And what is our stock and trade? Ourselves. Ourselves. We're not in the car business. We're not in the shoe business. Our product, our stock and trade is us. That's us. One object is to please, and we've underlined disclose damage, unsaleable goods, and above that, please write flawed thinking processes. Flawed thinking processes. Because that's what our damaged, unsaleable goods are. There are defective thoughts. That's why we call them defects. They're not assets, they're defects. So we are trying to disclose our flawed thinking processes. And why do we do that? To get rid of them promptly and without regret. That's the same in both. So there's nothing to write above that because it's the same, whether we're talking about shoes or cars or our stock and trade, our defects of character. Our mission is to get rid of them promptly and without regret. You may like some of those defects. We may cling to lust because, well, we like that. My sponsor was a thief. He loved to steal. And even in early recovery, he had trouble with that. And he noticed it because he would go shopping in a grocery store. And I don't think much about it. I bet most people here don't think much about when you go to buy grapes, do you grab one and eat it? Sure you do. You taste the grape. Do you pay for it? Nope. See, I rationalize I'm going to buy grapes. So if I take one off of this thing, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But he found that he got a charge. He got a rush. He got a feeling of having gotten over by eating that one grape. And to the day he died, I teased him about that he can't go into the store and buy so much as a grape. He's got to buy it and then find out that they're a sour batch or they're overripe or whatever the problem is. That the point here is the same thing, is that we have to get rid of these things without regret. And he has confused the value. He enjoys that defect. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about the values, and above values, write the word truths. Another word for truths in this case would be the actual worth, the actual value of that product. So here's a good way to think of, why do we do this inventory? We did take a look at a little formula recently where we said that when we made decisions based on self, and we said self will run riot, what happens? When I make decisions based on what's in it for me, what do I get out of it? Why should I do it? I'm in conflict with you, with God, with myself. In the three basic dimensions of life, I'm in conflict with one or all three of them. So when I collide with those forces, because you see, the problem with self-will is everyone's got it. If I try and force myself on you or some project we're working on, you've got your own game plan for what you want that project to look like. So you're going to do what? You're going to resist. You're going to retaliate. So when I slam into you, when I bump into you, you retaliate, you push back. When I make decisions based on self, I am in conflict. When I'm in conflict, I step on the toes of those people I'm in conflict with. They push back. They retaliate is the word that Bill uses, is retaliate. And what happens when they retaliate? Well, damn, I'm going to retaliate. I'm not going to let you push back on me without my saying so. So I push back on you. And what does it look like? For me, it looks like getting angry. It looks like um, saying or doing something that causes harm to other people, or I get afraid. So when I retaliate, I get angry, I get afraid, I become harmful to other people. In other words, I get resentful. And what happens when an alcoholic and an addict become resentful? We drink and we drug over it. So if the action of drinking and drugging is what we want to eliminate from our life, we first must identify the thought that set in motion the chain of events that ended with that action, because all action is born in thought. I can't reach over and pick up this pen without my brain telling my arm to tell my hand to tell my fingers to commit to the action of picking up the pen. All action is born in thought. And I know a lot of people say, well, I could act my way into good thinking. Sorry, that's not possible. Because if I'm saying I'm going to act my way into good thinking, that means I got an idea. I'm going to act my way into good thinking, which means it all starts with a thought. It always starts with a thought. Sorry about that. So all action is born in thought. So if I want to change, my actions of my life are lousy, it's because my thinking and my action are lousy. So if I want to change the actions, change the thinking. First, I have to identify those defects in my character that are affecting me, that are ruling, controlling, and dominating me. We've said in our third step on page 62 that God was going to be the director. He's the principal. He's the father. That's the correct order of things. So I am here to do his bidding, to follow what he wants me to do, not to give orders. So getting back to page 64, Bill says we did exactly the same thing with our lives. And he goes back through what we just did, which is to change those words and make it a personal inventory. We've already done it. Don't have to read it again. But he says we took stock honestly. Please underline or highlight that word honestly. We searched out the flaws. Please underline flaws, and let's put above it the word defects, because when we're talking about a personal inventory, that's what we're talking about. The flaws in our stock and trade are our defects of character. So the defects in our makeup which caused our failure. And please highlight the rest of this paragraph. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways, and let me just stop there for a minute, manifested in several different ways. Next to it, keep your place where it is now, but next to it, please write, see page 62, paragraph 1. It says that being convinced that self manifested in various ways. What are those various ways? Driven by 100 forms of fear. That's one of the ways. Self-delusion. There's another way. Self-seeking. There's another way. Self-pity. There's another way. The sentence began with selfishness, self-centeredness. That was the root of the problems. The root is the part of the plant that feeds the tree, that feeds the plant. It gives it life. So what Bill is saying here is if the ism or alcoholism or our addiction is to be looked at like the tree, then the roots that feed that tree are our manifestations of self. All of those different forms of self. And if you remember, we counted on those pages, I believe, 22 examples of him using the word self, 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 self. So he's saying it again here, back to page 64, paragraph 2. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. We considered its common manifestations. The next few pages that we're going to read are basically the end result of that consideration. When we consider something, we come to some kind of conclusions about it. And the next few pages are going to reveal that. What are those things, those considerations? So we read this paragraph last week, but I'm going to go through it again. Resentment is the number one offender. Let's define that term again. Resentment is really broken down into two parts. RE means to do again, and sentiment comes from the Latin word, I believe it is, sentire, which means to feel. So resentment means to re-feel something. Today, in our modern culture, if the topic of a meeting is resentment, everyone talks about anger. We somehow interchange those two words. Well, the only problem I have with that is that resentment is not limited to anger. Anger is a form of resentment. So is fear. So are guilt and shame and remorse that we carry as a result of the harms we've done. So what we're going to be doing in this inventory is to identify those flaws in our character. We're going to have to refeel some of them. So he begins this paragraph by saying, resentment is the number one offender. All resentments. Please notice that, because later when he gives us the first assignment, he doesn't say we made a list of people we resented. Watch. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From its stem, once again, stem all forms of spiritual dis-ease. And I've put a line in the word dis-ease after the word S. Dis/ease. Because when I'm in my malady, in my spiritual malady, I'm in a state of dis-ease. When I am not, when I am spiritually fit, I'm in a state of ease and comfort. I know serenity. I experience peace. I'm not in a state of dis-ease. From its stem all form of spiritual disease, and please highlight, for we have not only been mentally and physically ill. Mentally, that's the obsession. Physically, that's the allergy. We have also been spiritually sick. There's our three dimensions of life. The allergy, physical, the obsession, mental, and the spiritual malady. Please highlight this next sentence in pink. This is a promise. Anita's putting up the color codes in the chat so you can keep up with my silliness if you choose. But again, if you're going to look for all of the musts in the book, it's easy just to thumb through the book and look for the color green, because we highlight musts in green. And as Paige likes to say, the book is very musty. There's a lot of musts in this book. Actually, we've counted 143 of them so far, but for those of you who say there are no musts, start counting them. And we use prayer, pink, for prayers and promises, and this sentence is a promise. So if you're looking for prayers and promises and you thumb through the book, just look for pink. Easy peasy. So when the spiritual malady is overcome, please underline spiritual malady. We straighten out mentally. Please underline mentally, and physically. Please underline physically. Now let's go back. When the spiritual malady is overcome, when is the spiritual malady overcome? Above that, write steps 1, 2, and 3. That's how we get right spiritually. God is the director. He is the father. He is the principal. When we sincerely took that position, all sorts of remarkable things happen. We had a new employer, and our job was to keep close to him and perform his work well. So I got right spiritually in the first 3 steps by getting clear on who's in charge here. I came in here thinking I'm number one. I am the actor who is conducting everybody, all of the players, even the inanimate objects, the scenery, the lights had to be to my liking, because I'm number one. But I'm not number one. I'm number 2. I'm the actor. There's somebody else who's in charge of the lights and the curtains and all the other actors. And that is the director, the father, the principal. That is number 1, God. So the first thing I had to do in this recovery process is get straight on who's in charge and who's not. For 24 years in recovery, I had a very dysfunctional relationship with God, because I was told every morning to repeat your 3rd step prayer to God. and then tell him what you need him to do that day. Made sense to me. If I didn't tell him what I needed, how's he going to know? So I did that. And at the end of the day, I look at my list because you see, I kept copies of my list. I don't know if God does. He clearly doesn't. But I kept copies of mine. And I look at my list and, well, that's not done and that's not done. And okay, God, why don't we give it another shot? We'll try it again tomorrow. But I realized what I was doing was giving God the jobs he had to do. He's not my errand boy. I am here, as it says, we just read, to stay close to him and to do his bidding. And once I got that straight, I got right spiritually. And once I got right spiritually, what's the next thing I have to do? Get right up here. Get right in my thinking process. So when I straighten out spiritually, I overcome the mental part of my disease, which is steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. And when I get that straight, I straighten out physically, which is with the world and everyone in it, steps 8 and 9. So the recovery process follows a certain pattern. I get right spiritually, then I get right mentally, and then I get right physically. It doesn't happen the opposite way. What happens the opposite way is when I start to unravel, when I start to get spiritually diseased. I'm not at ease anymore. What's the first warning sign that I'm starting to unravel? I'm starting to have problems with personal relationships. Does that sound familiar? Those are the bedevilments. And it starts with having difficulty with other people. That's how I know when things are not too right with me, when things are starting to unwind. Why are you doing that? Don't you know you should be doing it this way? What are you doing? Let me show you. All of a sudden I'm hypercritical of everybody and everything. I have the answer for everything again. I'm back to being the stagehand who wants to direct everything. I have problems with everybody and everything. And if I follow through the rest of those bedevilments, it follows a pattern. I come apart spiritually, and then I begin to come apart mentally, where I realize, that's not the problem. You're the problem. I'm not the root of the problem. You did it. I'm back to being the victim. And then I come apart physically. I start to have difficulty, spiritually, in that I take control of everything again. So when a spiritual malady is overcome, I get right mentally and I get right physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Please notice he doesn't say when dealing with resentments in the 4th step, we set them on paper. He says when dealing with resentments, period, or comma, we set them on paper. So that means anytime in this book, when I am dealing with resentments, whether it's my 10th step where I watch for resentments, dishonesty, fear, or my 11th step, or my 10th step, or my 7th step, or when I am watching for these things, I am to set them on paper. Now, I honestly, I don't do that anymore, because when I'm watching for these things, I know what to do. The second I sense that resentment, what is it? Am I angry? Am I afraid? Okay, what am I angry about? What did that person do to deserve a place in hell? The things that we're going to talk about today, the questions that we're going to be asking as a result of that list of names that we have. I go through that. I take that out of the back of my head and I go across the grid. But the point to remember here is everywhere in this book, when it tells us to watch for resentments, Remember what he said on page 64. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. It's always a good idea. After a while, you won't need to take the paper and the pencil out. It's very easy to get into the habit of doing it, but it's very hard to get into the habit of doing it. So start doing it, and then you could stop doing it if you want to. So we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were resentful. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It didn't say that. It said with whom we were angry. Clearly, there's a difference. Resentment, anger is a form of resentment. And the first resentment we're going to look at are our angers. And then he's going to give us another one to look at, and another one. Bill is just like a Jewish mother. It's never enough. There's always one more thing you got to do. One more, that's good, Tatala, but come do this one more thing. You got to do a little bit better. It's always up in the ante. So that was the assignment from last week, is to make that list, simple list of names. Please highlight the rest of this paragraph. It's only five lines long. And while we're at it, I'm going to suggest you highlight the next paragraph. It's a total of about 6 lines. Just highlight them in yellow, I guess. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Let's underline why we were angry. Above that, write column 2. First column, the name. Next to that, why? Why do these people deserve a special place in hell? What did they do to deserve burning in the embers of hell for eternity? They did something to me that's really bad, and they're going to burn forever. So what did they do? Oh, they looked at me the wrong way. Ah, burn, burn. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Column 2. In most cases, we found that it was our self-esteem. Let's underline self-esteem. Our pocketbooks. Please underline pocketbooks. Our ambitions. Please underline ambitions. Our personal relationships. Underline, if you would, relationships, including sex. Please underline sex. Were hurt or threatened. And let's underline hurt or threatened. And above hurt and threatened, let's write harmed or feared or hurt. I'm sorry, harmed or feared. Which were harmed or feared, hurt or threatened. They mean the same thing. Going back to the previous page, when we started to underline self-esteem, pocketbook, ambitions, next to that, please write column 3, because that's what's going to be in column 3. These words, which we're going to identify in a moment as basic instincts of life. What basic instinct of mine was hurt or threatened by what you did? You see, I can't be angry at you unless you did something that hurt or threatened one of my basic instincts. You stepped on one of my toes. Was it my self-esteem toe? Was it my ambition toe? Was it my relationship toe? Was it my sex relation toe? Which toe did you step on? The basic instincts, and we're going to talk about them in a moment. So we were sore. We were burnt up. On our grudge list, underline grudge list, and above that, please put column 1, because that's what column 1 is. It's the list of the people, institutions, and principles that we're angry at, that we have a grudge against. Then it says opposite each of those names are injuries. Please underline our injuries, and above that, write column 2. Now, in the previous paragraph, he says why we were angry. That's the same thing. What are our injuries? What did they do to make me angry? What did they do to injure me? Column 2. Now we get to column 3. Was it self-esteem? Let's underline that. Security, underline that. Ambitions, let's underline that. Personal, underline that. Sex relations, let's underline that, which had been interfered with. Now, let me break down some of these terms a little bit further. He mentioned security. There are 3 types of security that we're going to be looking at. You may want to write it in the margin here or at the top of the page. There's physical security, which is my body. You did something to hurt me physically. You put your hands on me. You molested me. You beat me up. Whatever it is, you affected me physically. So you affected my physical security. What other kinds of security are there? The pocketbook, the hip bank. You did something to cost me money, wrecked my car, stole this, stole that. You did something that interrupted, threatened, hurt my financial security. My financial security, my physical security, and what's the third one? Emotional security. Emotional security is just a general sense of well-being. You stole that from me. What you did, you stepped on my my emotional security. And I get all fatigued. I'm no longer at ease. I am in a state of dis-ease. My emotional security has been interfered with. Ambitions, incidentally, is not just the broad sense. Like when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to grow up and I want to be a cowboy, or whatever it is that kids say as their great ambitions. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about simple ambitions, ambitions which mean my ability to accomplish simple tasks. Example, I'm invited to a family wedding. I want to go to that wedding. I like the people who are getting married. Oh, I want to go celebrate with them. Then I hear that my cousin David is going to be there, and I can't stand this son of a bitch. I don't want to be anywhere on the same planet, let alone in the same town, in the same room as this guy. So I don't go to that wedding because my anger towards this cousin has threatened my ambitions. I can't go to a simple function. I drive up to the grocery store. I need to get some groceries. And I see Joe Flimmelgates just went in, and he's also on the list. I can't stand him. So I go do another errand and I'll come back in an hour because I don't want to run into him. My anger towards that guy has affected my ambitions. I can't do something I want to do. I want to go in and get some milk and eggs and bread, and I want to get out of there, and I can't do that because of my anger for that person. My ambitions are affected. Again, I can't be angry at you unless you do something that interferes with one of my basic instincts. I'm going to ask that you take out your 12 and 12. Um, and if you don't have it, let's see if Andy could find this. Here's a challenge for you, Andy. Um, did give this out at one point. It's the annotated basic instincts. I think it's 521. 521. See if you could find that. And for those of you who have the book, I'm in the 12 and 12. Please turn to the section on step 4. It's one of the 2 times in our workshop that I'm going to be referring to this book. Because I think it serves the purpose of what the book sets us out to do. Page 42, Jackie. page 42. This book is meant to, remember what it says in the beginning, deepen and enhance your experience. Well, this is what that's about to do. In order for me to address the concept of basic instincts, I need to know what the hell you're talking about. I had no idea what you're talking about. You said basic instincts. I think Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas. And I'm not thinking about the same kind of things that you're thinking. I bet that I'm not. But the point is, I didn't know what it meant. This taught me. So we're on page 42. We're going to only read to about 44. But let's go through it, and I'm going to suggest some notes being taken. Andy, did you find it by any chance? The annotated 12 steps, annotated basic instincts?
I've just got the annotated 12 steps.
No.
Oh,
That's enough.
basic instinct annotated. Yeah. Okay.
I knew you could do it. We're on page 42. Boom. And most of the suggestions I'm going to make in terms of the annotations, the notes are already there. But this is page 42. It says, creation gave us instincts for a purpose, underlying instincts, and those are the basic instincts we're talking about. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. Basic instincts are God-given survival mechanisms. They're good. They serve a purpose. Bill's about to explain that to us. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, underline secure in their persons, and above that, right, physical security, because that's what that means, physical security, made no effort to, please underline, harvest food or construct shelter. That is physical security. There'd be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, let's underline reproduce, and that's sex relations. The earth wouldn't be populated. If there were no social instincts, and underline social instincts, and please write relationships. And in the margin or somewhere on that page, you may want to write security is three parts: emotional, physical, financial. We mentioned that a moment ago. We now have relationship instincts. Social instinct is a reference to relationship instincts. And relationship instincts are broken down into personal, which is my relationship with you folks, my neighbors, coworkers, relatives, anyone I have a personal relationship with, unless it's sexual. If I'm having a sexual relationship, then it's a sexual relationship. It's one or the other. So that's what we're talking about in terms of relationships. Continuing, if there were no social instinct, if men cared nothing for the society of one another, there'd be no society. For these desires, for the sex relationship, for material and emotional security. Material is financial security, emotional materials, a general sense of well-being, and for companionship, personal relationships, companionship, to have friends. Life is with people. We're not meant to be hermits. Yet these instincts, so necessary for our existence, underline, please, far exceed their proper functions. In other words, they get out of proportion. Some basic instinct caused you to do what you did to me. The cousin that molested me when I was 10, 11, 12, and 13, something in his gearbox was malfunctioning to cause him to do what he did to somebody he loved like a kid brother. One of his basic instincts was out of proportion, and it caused him to step on one of my basic instincts, which became hypersensitized because his was out of proportion. It starts to help me begin to understand why these things happen. So they're out of proportion, powerfully, blindly, many times subtly. They drive us, underline drive, dominate, underline dominate, and insist upon ruling our lives, underline ruling. Our desires for sex, for material and emotional security, and for an important place in society. Please underline an important place in society because that is ambition to accomplish goals, to have a place in society, to have a job, often tyrannize us. When thus out of joint, and out of joint just means out of proportion, not right sized. Man's natural desires give him great trouble, practically all the trouble there is. No human being, however good, is exempt from those troubles. Nearly every serious emotional problem can be seen, and I love this, please underline, as a case of misdirected instinct. The people who hurt me weren't doing it to me. I just happened to get in the damage field. I was in the line of fire. A case of misdirected instinct. When that happens, our great natural assets, the instincts, have turned into physical, mental liabilities. In other words, they've turned into defects. Step 4 is a vigorous and painstaking effort to discover what these liabilities, these defects in each of us have been. We want to find exactly how, when, and where our natural defects, or natural desires rather, which are basic instincts, it's another way of saying basic instincts, have warped us. We wish to look squarely at the unhappiness this has caused us and others. By discovering what our emotional deformities are, please underline that emotional deformities once again means defects of character. By discovering what those defects are, what do? We can move towards their correction by identifying them in 4 and 5. We can then move to correct them in 6 and 7. So without a willing and persistent effort to do this, there can be little sobriety or contentment for us. Without a searching and fearless moral inventory, moral is the truth about ourselves. An inventory is defined as an itemized list. It is not a life story, a list of truth about ourselves. Most of us have found that the faith which really works in daily living is out of reach because we're still ruled by fear. If we don't identify what rules, controls, and dominates us adversely, then we are still ruled by those fears. So before tackling the inventory problem in detail, let's have a closer look at what the basic problem is. Simple examples like the following take on a world of meaning when we think about them. Suppose a person places sex desire ahead of everything else. In such a case, this imperious urge, and in the past he's used the word, he would have, if you're writing it today, used the words horny impulse, but that's what it means. Um, these are, where am I? Can destroy his chances for material and emotional security as well as his standing in the community. Another may develop such an obsession for financial security. Again, obsession is a thought which overcomes all thoughts to the contrary. If all we do is think about money and money and money and money and money, that he wants to do nothing but hoard the money. And he goes to the extreme, he can become a miser or even a recluse who denies himself both family and friends. He's miserly and saving up and accumulating this money and never gets to enjoy it. Nor is the quest for security always expressed in terms of money. How frequently we see a frightened human being determined to depend completely upon a stronger person for guidance and protection. Please underline that. I've known people like that, that they are so empty and weak inside that they latch on to somebody, usually someone bigger, and they depend on it. They become a toady to that person. Disillusioned and happy, helplessness are his lot. In time, all his protectors either flee or die, and he's once more left alone and afraid. In other words, he's filled with fear. We have seen men and women who go power mad. That's an ambition instinct, who devote themselves to attempting to rule their fellows. These people often throw to the winds every chance for legitimate security and a happy family life. Whenever a human being becomes a battleground for the instincts, I love that expression, a battleground, which just means we're in conflict with those basic instincts of God, ourselves, and other people. In other words, there's no harmony in our life. But that's not all the danger. Every time a person imposes his instincts upon another, unhappiness follows. I step on your toes, what happens? You retaliate. If the pursuit of wealth tramples upon people who happen to be in the way, then anger, jealousy, revenge are likely to be aroused. If sex runs riot, there's a similar uproar. Demands made upon other people for too much attention, protection, and love can only invite domination or revulsion in the protectors themselves, two emotions quite as unhealthy as the demands which revoke them. When an individual's desire for prestige, that's self esteem, ambition, pride, becomes uncontrollable, whether in a sewing circle or in the international conference table, other people suffer and often revolt. This collision of instincts can produce anything from a cold snub to a blazing revolution. In these ways, we are set in conflict not only with ourselves, but with other people who have instincts too. Problem with self esteem, with self will, is everyone's got it. Alcoholics, especially, should be able to see that instinct run wild in themselves is the underlying cause of their destructive drinking. We've drunk to drown feelings of fear, frustration, depression. We've drunk to escape the guilt of passions and then have drunk again to make more passion possible. We've drunk for vain glory, which is just pride, self esteem, and that we might enjoy foolish dreams of pomp and power. This perverse soul sickness, please underline soul sickness, is not pleasant to look at. Instincts on rampage balk. In other words, they resist investigation. And the reason why they resist investigation is because we have spent our whole life rationalizing and justifying our behaviors. We're unable to see ourselves honestly. That's why we need an objective third party to see the things in us in our inventory that we don't or won't see. That is our soul sickness, our spiritual malady. That's what basic instincts are about. Let's get back to the book, see if we can get to the next assignment. Yeah, let's try this. We are usually as definite as this example. Now, Bill's going to give us 3 columns, and he's going to show us different ways to write this inventory out. And we're only talking about 3 of the 4 columns. There is a 4th column. We'll get to that next week. We're on page 65 in the big book. We're usually as definite as this example. I am resentful at, that's a list of names, not a story, names. Take a name off that list you've got, put it on the top of the other list. Take that notebook, divide it into 4 columns. You have 4 columns. We're talking about columns 1, 2, and 3 for now. Don't worry about column 4. So in column 1, we put that person's name. We take it off our list. We put that person's name. Then in column 2, the cause, a brief description. A brief description, that's it. Not he said, she said, None of that crap. There are 19 words that we can use. Try and be economical. You don't have to explain it. When you get to your fifth step, if your sponsor wants more information, he'll ask. So if your cousin abused you, and his in column 1 is his name, column 2 just is the word molest. That's all you need to write. And then column 3, what basic instinct is hurt or affected? Andy, if you can give me, if you would, the review of angers. Please ignore the 4th column. The first column is the list of the people, principles, institutions that we already have down. Next to that, why am I angry at these people? What did they do to deserve this special place in hell? Easy. Column 3 gets easier. It's multiple choice. I'll let you in on a secret. So is column 4, but we're not going to talk about that yet. Column 3 is basic instincts. So just pick them. Which basic instinct was hurt or threatened by what that person in column 1 did to you? If that person in column 1 fired you from a job and embarrassed you in front of other people, you have his name in column 1. The cause is fired me, embarrassed me in front of others. What's affected? Well, obviously, my financial security. I no longer have a source of income. My ambitions are affected. How am I going to pay my bills? My pride is affected. How does that look to other people? I'm being humiliated in front of my coworkers. My personal relations are affected because those people I work with who are friends may not be friends anymore. And sex relations may be affected. I had a guy who put down in this column, this inventory, his boss fired him in front of other people. And in column 3, he had sex relations. And the way he explained it was he was so miserable for a week or two after that happened that his wife would not let him in the bedroom. He had to sleep downstairs on the couch until he was ready to act like a person. So it affected his sex relations. Look for the ripple effect. It's basic multiple choice. I've defined some of the terms at the bottom. Self-esteem is how I feel about me. Pride is how I think you feel about me. Emotional security is that general sense of well-being, and ambitions, my ability to accomplish tasks. Let's take this down for a minute. Let's go back to the book. So here's Bill's examples. Mr. Brown, what did he do? Bill itemized these things. First of all, he eats his attention to my wife. He's angry that he pays attention to his wife. What basic instinct was affected by that? All right, sex relations, self-esteem. Next, go back to column 2. What else? We can be angry at someone for multiple reasons. So he's angry at Brown because of his attention to his wife. What else did Brown do? He told my wife about my mistress. Whew, how rude. How inconsiderate, right? Well, what's affected there? Sex relations, self-esteem. Easy. What's number 3? What else did this beautiful human being, this SOB, do? Brown may get my job at the office. This is a real wonderful human being. He's going to take your job. He's going to take your wife. He's going to take your mistress. He's taken everything away from you. So what Bill is doing here is going across the columns. Rather than having a list of things in column 2, he itemizes the things in column 3. Right next to it, the next one, Mrs. Jones, he puts them together. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. All of the things in column 3 are the same for every one of those. So he just put down the basic instincts that were affected for every one of them were personal relationships, self-esteem. Somebody gave me this. They found it at a conference. Mr. Brown needs his ass kicked. And there's a picture of the page that we're reading here. So it's highlighted too. But Mr. Brown is a real character. He needs his ass kicked. He wants to take your wife, your job, your mistress, everything. This is a human being who is desperately in need of an ass kicking. So that is the assignment for next week, is to take your notebook, that notebook, Andy, if you put up the 4 columns again in the notebook. That's 40A, I think. There it is. In column 1, take a name from your list. Next to it, the reason, brief bullet points, no explanations, just bullet points. And my suggestion is when you put things in column 1, use initials, use nicknames. Don't put down people's names. It could fall into the wrong hands and you start hurting people that you never had any intention of doing that to. So use nicknames that you may know. Like I had down on mine, I put Kasu, Kasu. I know what that is. Nobody else does. Not even that person knows who that is. So just use a nickname so you can know who we're talking about. Column 2, bullet points, what they did, took my job, told my boss, etc. Column 3, what basic instinct is affected? Look at the list you've got. This 4-column review of angers and pick the word that fits. It's multiple choice. Just look at the sheet Andy just put up and pick one. And if it's all of them, it's all of them. Don't worry about if you're repeating them all. That's the whole point, is we're looking for causes and conditions. So you may have every one of those on every one of your angers. That's fine. All I ask is this. Once you have those listed in column 3, go back and circle the one that occurred to you first. Which was the basic instinct that was hurt or threatened most? Or first? Which one of those things? In the book, Bill puts the word fear next to the one that's affected most. I'm going to suggest you circle it because that way we're not confusing this fear issue. There's a reason for it, but we don't need to get into it yet. So that's the assignment for next week, is take that notebook, column 1, column 2, multiple choice, column 3, leave column 4 blank, then go to the next, column 1, 2, 3, skip 4, go to the next. That's it. Get as many of those as you can get done for next week. And I'm going to stop the recording. So if there are any questions,